Why did they draft the Scarecrow to the baseball team?
I don't know why.
Because he was outstanding in his field.
Ha ha ha.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow. Daddy wasn't
Hi, welcome to the
finding a
Mochiverse.
bow
I'm Linette,
wow.
And I'm Skip.
Daddy wasn't
and welcome
finding a
to our
bow
show. It's a
wow.
real show now,
I'm
guys. This
that
is awesome.
little cat. I'm
I'm
very
excited. Are you
fond of
excited?
that.
More than I
I'd
can say.
rather have a
Yeah.
big
Folks, that's his excited face. Get used to it.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. So, I don't know about you, but when someone uses a common saying and they do it wrong, it kind of like gets me sometimes in the head. It kind of like annoys me. Like if someone, and so many people do this, but if someone says irregardless, which I understand is now a word and it's perfectly fine to use, or if they say like it's a mute point, I don't dig that. Kind of irritates me a little, or like, it could just kind of reminds me of that guy from Back to the Future who's all like, make like a tree and get out of here. So it kind of drives me crazy. But I do realize there's something special about a public figure who consistently kind of misspeaks or uses malapropisms. And he's got enough charisma and personality kind of makes it work. And even in some cases, it adds to their charm, right? It becomes kind of a trademark, right?
That's right. So, hey, listen, we're going to talk about the great Yogi Berra.
Yeah.
And I think we can agree that this was definitely a journey.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was a journey. We started off with one idea and then it really went off the rails. Like, we have a lot to say about Yogi Berra today. And what's great about it is the process, which is something I really like, which, we'll kind of part the curtain a little bit and let you guys in on it, is how we started off sort of choosing this as just like a mildly interesting topic to maybe touch on. And then the more Dad and I talked about it and researched it, tootled around on the internet, the more we learned about Yogi Berra as a person and a figure. And I think from my perspective, what really fascinated me was how my whole perception changed from, this is a guy who was in the sort of zeitgeist when I was really little. I didn't know much, I just knew who he was. I knew what he said, to like, dude, I love this guy. I mean, the more we talked about him, I was like, this guy is like amazing. And also, it really made me think about the way celebrity used to work back in the day. I mean, I'm sure it kind of works that way still now, but like, especially when I was a kid, you'd have all these sports guys who were like spokesmen for pretty much everything. And that was just the way it was. All over television, you'd have a bunch of sports guys like, I wear pantyhose and
yeah.
I drink coffee and I drink Yoo-hoo and I go bowling, and this is a great new bowling computer that we have and stuff like that. So, the ad guys really earn their money, but we'll definitely talk about that aspect of it a little later. But yeah, we're going to talk about Yogi Berra. It's very cool.
For me, with Yogi Berra, it's as opposed to what you see now with ads, is the ads now are more vanilla, if you will, for lack of a better way to put it.
Hmm.
They don't show a lot of personality. There are some exceptions,
Hmm.
but for the most part, there's really no personality to the ads. They try to put a little humor in it, but you really don't get any inkling of what their personality is like, with the exception of maybe Peyton Manning, who does commercials for everything.
Oh yeah, is he the one? Who's the one who he's doing like the nationwide commercials with the country singer?
That's Peyton Manning.
That's Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see
And,
those all. They're kind of annoying, but
yeah. And,
it's
and they
cute.
always joke about him as never been a product that he wouldn't hawk, so it's,
Yeah.
but he does it in a humorous, goofy kind of way. Not to the level that Yogi Berra did, which is there's a lot
No,
of
it's no Entenmann's
ads.
cookies.
It just not at all, and he was sort of famous for saying things that you shake your head or roll your eyes trying to understand what did he just say, so
Well,
kind
and
of,
exactly, and we'll talk about it later too when we talk about the commercials. It's actually kind of sad because you could almost see the pain in his face when he's reading the script of these commercials. He's like, that's not. No, you guys missed the point, but we'll talk about that. We'll definitely get into that when we start talking about the commercials. Why don't we go ahead and start talking about Yogi Berra?
Yeah, so let's just start out by saying that I am a lifelong Boston Red Sox fan.
Mhm.
I am
That's
also a Yankee hater, not the players, the
You just like
organization.
you're contractually obligated by the place you were born to hate the Yankees. I get it. I understand.
Pretty much, yeah. It's more the way the organization conducts business that I have a problem with. I will always respect. There was a lot of great Yankee players, but Yogi Berra was outstanding. He was, he's born Lawrence Peter Berra,
I'll
uh,
say the Italian version.
the Italian. I don't know. You say it. I didn't quite
Uh
get it.
Lorenzo Pietro.
Enzo Pietro. He was born in May 12th, 1925 in St. Louis, Missouri. He lived until the age of 90. His obituary read, Yogi Berra has died. Now,
Yogi
it's
Bear.
yeah, Yogi Berra has died. So it's like, what the heck,
Yeah,
Uh,
but to
and
that credit, so that was the AP. I did a little research on that too.
mhm,
So the AP wrote Yogi Bear has died age 90. And
yeah,
then almost immediately, just hundreds of small newspaper articles really dissing the AP for doing that. So
yeah,
that's good. Yeah,
yeah,
they were like,
and,
they
and,
made a
and
boo-boo.
they made a boo boo. It's right, boo boo, boo boo. Yeah, wasn't the
Yeah,
Yogi
that was
Berra's boo boo, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they all every single newspaper did it, Dad. Every single newspaper just took that line. They were
Yep.
like, made a quote unquote boo boo. Get it? I made a joke. Like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Newspapers.
Yeah. So I mean, just to start it off, that we'll describe later on the episode what people will remember Yogi Berra for. But basically, the thing you give justice to the player as a player. He was with the New York Yankees from 1946 to 1963, in the
Mhm.
Mets in 1965, and a manager and a coach in 1964, 1984, 1985. Back to the Mets as a coach, 1972 to 75. In Houston, he was a coach, 1986 to 1989. He was quite accomplished. When you hear briefly, I talked about this earlier with Lynn off camera, if you will. His accomplishments. I mean, he had 10 World Series championships as a player, and they talk about players in other sports being goats. I mean, if that isn't a goat, I don't know what is.
Right,
You
right.
know, he was the first person to hit a pinch hit homer in the World Series, 18-time All Star, outstanding defensive catcher, and a dangerous hitter. As far as his name, Yogi, he got the name Yogi from a friend of his, Jack McGuire. And
Mhm.
what it came down to is they were playing American Legion ball, and they never had any places to sit, no benches like you see nowadays.
Right.
So they'd have to sit on the ground. And Yogi would sit like in a yoga pose. And the friend made a comment that, hey, you look like one of those yogis
Mhm.
uh, who practices yoga. And then they picked up the name from there, and that's how he got his nickname. Uh,
Yeah,
you know,
which is really cute, you
yeah,
know.
it is. It's just it's something how people nicknames come from. But that's always sort of an interesting, and everybody knew him as Yogi Berra after that.
Yeah, we all know about that, don't we? Don't we,
Yep.
Skip?
Yes, we do. Yes,
Do we want to take a brief detour and talk about the name Skip? Because
yes.
that's not your government name.
No, it's not my government
We
name.
can do a whole episode about what your government name actually is, but we'll do that later.
Yeah, yeah. I have to understand it. My mother was Irish, full-blooded Irish, and my dad was full-blooded Italian.
Mm,
And in the Italian tradition, the firstborn is named after the grandfather. And
right.
my grandfather's name was Salvatore. My grandmother, and I can't do an Irish accent, said, I'll not have a Salvatore in my house. So we have to come up with another name. They toyed around with Scott, but
Oh, is that why I
yeah,
was Scott?
yep, yep.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the things that my mother dressed me up for something, like a sailor's uniform,
An
uh,
adorable sailor's outfit, by the
yeah,
way.
something like that. And they said I looked like a skipper, and that's where Skip came from. It actually
Yeah.
was Skipper and then Skippy and then Skip as it moved along. So
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah,
I got my name.
the picture is really cute because it's just this little baby Skip in a little sailor outfit, and it's probably Franny who wrote it on there. Just wrote
I
Skippy right on there in quotes with quotes.
I think she was the one that gave me the nickname,
Yeah,
and yeah, that's back when I was cute. So
that's right. A
yeah,
very long time ago.
very long time ago. Anyway, that's sort of the backstory. There's more to it than that, but that's how I got my name.
Yeah, see,
And
my nickname is just a derivative of my name, except for Bum Girl. That was different.
oh yeah, that's different. Yeah,
Yes, folks, I am revealing myself to the world. I guess we'll have to make t-shirts
yeah,
now.
we'll have to make t-shirts. And it really came down to when you were crawling and your butt was up in the air all the time when you were crawling. So
Bum
anyway,
Girl.
that's
I
yeah,
have no shame. It's fine. It's
that's
totally
fine.
fine. I'm a person of the public.
Yeah.
Anyway, Yogi Berra.
Yogi Berra. Back to Yogi Berra. I think Lynn, you'd seen the documentary, and you were telling
Mhm.
me earlier about how Joe Garagiola and Yogi Berra were lifelong friends.
Yeah, they lived across the street from each other.
Yeah, and Garagiola was offered $500 to join the Cardinals, and Yogi was offered nothing at first, and then 250.
Yeah.
And
And he was like, no.
yeah, and some of that had to do with the way he looked, and you have to see a picture of Yogi Berra to understand the the thing that went along with the way he looked. He wasn't your typical ball player.
Well,
Anyways,
it's just an Italian thing. I mean, some Italian guys are like tall and
mhm.
thin, and some Italian guys are little dudes with big hands, and that's
Yeah,
what Yogi Berra looked like.
Yogi Berra, yeah,
And
Anyway, the
sticky outy ears.
exactly. I didn't even to say that. That's like nowadays they would talk about, you look like a car going down the street with its doors open. Um, yeah. So anyway, the manager of the time was Branch Rickey. He just knew he was going to be leaving the Cardinals and planning on waiting and getting Berra to sign with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And by
Right.
the time he got there as manager, Berra had already signed with the Yankees.
Right. And I think he had did he go? I can't remember. I don't know if you did the research as well, but like Berra went to Normandy right around that time. I mean, he was like a
Yeah,
teenager when he
yeah,
went to
to
Normandy.
Normandy. Right.
Yeah.
He signed with the Yankees in 1492. Yeah. Okay.
That was wow.
1943. He signed with the Yankees in 1943 before serving
Okay.
in the United States Navy as a gunner's mate. He was present during the Normandy landings during World War II.
Hmm.
He was wounded in his left hand, but he declined to fill out the paperwork to get a Purple Heart because he was concerned that because at the time people would get telegram notifications that your son was wounded, or
Right.
so he was concerned that his mother would worry that he had been hurt.
And that kind of reminds me of something you told me too about writing home when
Oh
you
yeah,
were away, because you used to write home a certain way, and then you kind of stopped writing certain things because you heard that, oh, people are starting to get a little worried.
yeah. Well, what happened? I'd be writing home. It's like I'm sitting in the distinguished visitors room because it was the only private place on the base, and I'd be writing a letter home. While I was writing one time, we had a big explosion, and what it was is an ammo dump had been blown up. And I'd just say, hey, oh, look what just happened. And
Hey guys, I'm in Vietnam and there was an explosion, but don't worry.
yeah,
Fine.
everything's fine. And I heard through someone for the letter saying that, my mother got very upset by that. So
Right.
I stopped writing about incidents that happened while I was there, just because
That makes
it
sense.
gets people worried. And so I can really sympathize with why he didn't say anything.
Right.
Okay, this is basically, just going over his accomplishments, which are important. It's not what people knew him for, but it's what he was as a ball player. He was one of 9 managers to lead both American and National League teams to the World Series. He appeared as a player, coach, or manager in 13 of 15 World Series that New York baseball teams won from 1947 through 1981. The Brooklyn Dodgers won the World Series, 55 World Series, and the Giants won in 54. He was neither a player, coach, or manager of either team, which is significant.
Well,
Overall,
I think it's also interesting too when you talked about how he didn't look like a ball player.
no, yeah,
They also said he didn't look like a manager when he became a manager. It's
no.
like, what is do you
What are you
guys know
supposed to
what
look like?
baseball looks like? I mean,
Yeah,
in the old days, it used to be just a bunch of, slobby looking guys up there being goofs.
yeah, which is sort of odd, but that he was there was a lot of criticism, if you will, not looking at him, not criticism, but downplaying him as a ball player because of the way he looked. He basically played or coached in 21 World Series, 13 on the winning side. He caught Don Larsen's perfect game in Game 5 of the World Series, 1956 World Series. And one of the things about that game, which is interesting, I did the research, was it was one of those games. Don Larsen was a great pitcher, but it was one of those games where he didn't have his stuff. And if you follow baseball, there are times when, or any sport, there are times when you're on, everything's clicking for you.
Right.
In this particular game, Don Larsen didn't have anything. Uh, Yogi Berra called the whole game, set up the pitches every step of the way, which, if you really consider it, that's really what contributed to that perfect game was his
Yeah.
calling of the game.
Right.
He knew what pitches the batters liked, and it's interesting that one of the stories that his granddaughter had said on the documentary that she did was that while he was in care, he had dementia later on in life, and he barely knew what he had for lunch. And she had brought a gift as a pennant, a National League pennant, and it had signed by all these different players. And he looked at all the players' signatures, and he'd say, "Yeah, this one couldn't handle a fastball inside. This one here was a sucker for a curveball."
Yeah.
He'd know every single one what pitch they could handle or couldn't handle. In that way, he was a savant. And if you really come down to it, it showed how intelligent he was in the days nowadays where they do all metrics and everything. He did it by him
Get it in
by
his
his,
head.
which is
Which is
interesting.
and it's amazing too, because like, I mean, I'm not a sport person anyways, but even as just a person of the world, I would have had no idea the amazing talent he had as a catcher,
Yep.
because you don't think, I don't know, people who don't follow sports don't really think about the catchers when they look at baseball. But that's a very important part.
Yeah, I saw another documentary that Tim Russett did, and he had Yogi Berra, Johnny Bench, Pudge Fisk, and Tim McCarver, and I might have got that last name wrong.
That's
At any
okay.
rate, they were talking about catchers being the general. They really ran the game. A lot of pitchers, not all pitchers, but a lot of pitchers, they would say specifically they weren't that smart. But their thing was they just didn't know what they would. They just knew throw the ball to a certain spot. And the way the catchers would do is set up things like they'd set up pitches and stuff like that. So that was an interesting way to look at it. They were really the generals. They were the most important
Oh, and they
player on the
knew
team.
and they knew the actual specific talents of the hitters
Mhm.
enough to say, give him this one, because you're going to get him with this one, or let's help him out with that one. And he was strategic too. He talked about it in an interview. He said to somebody that he helped some of these hitters, and so he's like, "Well, what do you mean? Why would you help them?" He said, "Well, sometimes they need a little help."
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting nowadays. I spoke earlier about metrics, and that's really a big deal in baseball now. They know what pitches someone can handle, and you listen and follow a game, you'll hear it in the announcers, and they it's not so much. I don't want to downplay the announcers being smart or not smart, but they're fed a lot of information to tell you, hey, listen, they're setting this batter up. Now, what the next thing they have to do is they want their eyes to go up no, up high or down low.
Right.
It changes the perspective. Before they had that analysis, they'd have catchers like Yogi Berra and Joe Garagiola and Johnny Bench and
Just
others who
doing the damn thing.
just do it. They knew off the top of their head. They knew the hitters. They knew what the hitters could handle, and they knew what the pitchers could do. So
And very strategic in a game that is not famous for its strategy as much as
mhm.
football is.
Yep.
and because if you think about it, even like Yogi Berra said in that little interview, if you're helping one guy hit, that might be strategic later on for the rest of the game. Let's start the game this way. And the flow of the entire game is just as important as each individual play, just like football would be, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they
And
would.
this is from a person who knows nothing about
Nothing about
sports.
this.
So
That's right. Yeah.
don't at me. I don't know what I'm talking about, but it makes sense to my brain.
Yeah, yeah, and basically what happens with in games is, and you see it if you watch enough of the sport, is that a pitcher sometimes will face a batter three times, all the batters three times in a game, and by the third time around, the batter may start to figure out what the pitcher's going to throw to him, and it's the catcher's job to make sure that the batter can't figure that out. Again, he was an interesting cat, and I think a lot of appreciation for catchers uh, came from some of the research we did on this.
Absolutely, especially for me because I don't know anything about anything, but I really enjoyed learning all the little things that I'm sure many people overlooked, especially if I did.
And one last thing, which is really in terms of his baseball, was that as you saw, he had as I spoke earlier, had a long association with the Yankees. Yogi had a rift with George Steinbrenner, which is not surprising. Well, the last time that he went to be a manager for the Yankees, he agreed to be a manager for the second time, providing he wasn't fired until the season was complete, because George Steinbrenner was really quick on the trigger.
Yeah.
However, 16 games into the season, Steinbrenner sent an assistant, didn't go personally, to fire Yogi. Now,
Did he send George Costanza?
He might, I don't know, but somebody like that. And that really, started a rift. And that went on for some 15 years where Yogi wanted nothing to do with the Yankees or George Steinbrenner. And the only way that ended was that George actually did some humble pie and went to Yogi's house in person to apologize.
Did the honorable thing.
Did the honorable thing. Yeah, speaking of Steinbrenner, I was watching this thing on YouTube, and they were interviewing Larry David, and he was asked the question about if he had considered having Steinbrenner on the show to play himself. And he said, yeah, we did a screen test with Steinbrenner. And he said, then later on, he says, I got to look at the screen test, and he was awful. It was terrible, So he says, now I've got to call Steinbrenner and tell him, we've cut you out of the show.
We decided to go in a different direction.
Yeah, I decided to go in a different direction. So he says, I called Steinbrenner. Hey, listen, this is Larry David. I want to talk to Steinbrenner. He talked to Steinbrenner. He says, George, I got some news for you about the show, the recording. He says, come on. He says, I'm a big boy. I can handle it. Tell me. He says, well, we had to cut you from the show. We're going in a different direction. And he says, he did take it very well. He put his big boy pants on, and he handled it well. He says, oh, okay, I appreciate you letting me know that you're moving in another direction. Thanks for considering me. This is interesting. Anyway.
And then he still used him. He just did it like the
Yeah, basically what he did at that point was that Larry David did George Steinbrenner voice with the back of the head, and you never saw his face, obviously, because he wasn't in it. So he would always do the Steinbrenner voice. And actually, during this YouTube thing that I was watching, he started going back into the Steinbrenner voice when he started talking about it. So,
well, it was good that it actually makes it better that he went the Charlie's Angels route with Steinbrenner, where you just never see him, but you hear him and you see this sort of random actor just waving his arms.
Right.
It's very good. Pretty much him, so it's fine.
Yep. In spite of all his accomplishments, now we really want to talk about what people really know about Yogi more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
He was most known for his malapropisms.
Right. That's how I remembered him.
Right. At one point he said, it's deja vu all over again. I think a lot of folks have heard that said, and it was attributed to Yogi Berra. And the reason he said it was that they were playing games, and this 2 games in a row, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris hit back-to-back home runs. And as a response to that, that's what he said. It's deja vu all over again.
So good.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, these where these came from, and this, you hear more and more of them. There was a one which is, he was given directions. He said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And what it was that he was given Joe Garagiola directions to his house, and basically, when you come to the fork in the road, to take it. That was where that came from.
He wasn't speaking metaphorically about
No,
like if you have a choice in your career. He was
right.
speaking about a literal road
The little
and
road. That's
also
right.
not giving very good directions on which way to go.
Yep. Yep.
He's like Robert Frost, just
It was just amazing the things he said, and and they would come out of his mouth naturally.
he's like,
There
why
was,
are you laughing?
yeah, yeah. And at one point, he was asked by reporters about his sayings, and he said, I didn't say everything I said. I mean,
Yeah.
that was typical of him. You know,
He also
there's
said that thing about the funeral. Like, you should go to other people's funerals or else they won't go to yours.
yours. That's right.
I like
Exactly.
that one.
Yeah. And another, you can observe a lot by watching.
Yes.
And another one which is famous in baseball is 90% mental, and the other half is physical.
Yeah. Let's talk about the one that you got me with when I was a kid. And I was embarrassingly too old to have been fooled by this one. Let's talk about the pizza one.
The pizza one. Yeah, one time he was at a restaurant getting pizza, and they said, how many slices you want? He says, cut the pizza in 4 slices because I'm not hungry enough to eat 6.
Yeah.
You know,
And you did that to me.
well,
And
yeah.
I probably was way too old to be suckered by that. I was probably at least 12 or 13. And with a complete, folks, I just want to emphasize, completely deadpan. This man who raised this child said to me, I mean, this pizza is cut into like 8 slices, but I usually would rather it was cut into 6 because I can't eat that much pizza. And I went, oh yeah, that sounds logical. Okay. And you just looked at me like, really? Really? And I had no idea why I was being so dumb. I really am
Yeah.
a smart person. I really am, I promise.
Yeah, sometimes when you say something in a deadpan expression, people just don't quite get it. And then all
Oh,
of a sudden they go, hey.
hey, Richard gets me all the time with that stuff because he's talking to me and I think he's just telling me something about work. And it's a dad joke that he's giving me. It's just, I'm cursed. He did
Yeah.
this to me one time and I felt so bad because I came home from work and he's sitting on the couch. He goes, so I got a promotion. And I was like, uh-huh. All right. What? And he really got a promotion. And he's like, yeah, so I'm gonna be working here now, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm so sorry. Sorry. It's good stuff.
It's like it's a delivery, I guess.
It is. It's his fault. I blame him.
Yep. 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 And as being a dad, you can sort of appreciate dad jokes, but you can also appreciate some of the things that Yogi Berra said.
Absolutely.
The future ain't what it used to be. That's one of his. He says, I usually take a 2-hour nap from 1 to 4 p.m.
Okay, so just a little more party of the curtain here. We share notes. We share notes for the show between each other, folks. And I saw this one. I'm reading all these things, I'm reading all these sayings. And then a little bit separate by a couple of lines was, I usually take a 2-hour nap from 1 to 4. And I legitimately thought that my father was just writing some stuff and decided to let me know about his nap schedule for the day. Cause I was just like, oh, okay, Dad, why are you talking about your naps? Like, and then I went, oh wait, 2-hour nap from 1 to 4. He got me again.
Again.
He got me again.
Time and again. So.
Yogi Berra is the ultimate dad. Actually, he is, because didn't he have like 5 boys who all became baseball players?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. He did a lot of, he did some endorsements.
Yes.
Yoo-hoo. This is one you talked about.
Yes.
When he was asked in the commercial if the drink he endorsed was hyphenated, and he said, no, ma'am, it isn't even carbonated.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So it's very pure in a way. It's
Yeah.
like, this is the thing I'm learning about Yogi Berra the more I see him, especially when you see him in videos and you read about him. He really just was this guy. He was just a wholesome, pure guy who was just answering questions and saying stuff. He didn't know that people were waiting in the wings to just, sabotage everything he said. And
Well, and the more he said it, the more it started becoming a thing. And that's what people started to know him for. It's just like Alan Berra, he described Yogi Berra's sayings as distilled bits of wisdom, which, like good country music and old John Wayne movies, gets to the truth in a hurry.
yeah,
The Economist magazine in January of 2005 dubbed him the wisest fool of the past 50 years.
it's
You know,
trying to be generous there, but doesn't, it's like I'm being nice to you in a not nice way. But
yeah,
yes, I get it.
yeah, and it's like you would talk about a little bit about the Yogi Berra, Yogi Bear connection.
Yes. Most people, and especially now, most people who are under a certain age actually don't know who Yogi Berra was, but they certainly know who Yogi Bear was. And there are some of us, myself included, who didn't know whether there was a loose connection between Yogi Bear and Yogi Berra or not. And it's hard to get to the real truth, but the short answer is probably. So Yogi Bear, the cartoon, first debuted in 1958 as part of the Huckleberry Hound show. It wasn't long before Berra sued Hanna-Barbera Productions for defamation of character. He did sort of drop the suit soon after, and then sometimes it says he dropped the suit and sometimes he says the judge threw it out for a couple of different reasons. Like in the documentary I watched, it said that the suit was thrown out by the judge because Yogi isn't Berra's real name, so it's not defamation. But some sources I read just said he dropped the suit. So it's kind of hard to get to the real truth of that. I actually don't think he really had a case. I mean, for sure, the name is an inspiration, but if you look at Yogi Berra cartoons, there really isn't, it's not as though they made Yogi Bear sort of a caricature of Yogi Berra exactly. I mean, there were a few short cartoon bits before the actual like feature show that had Yogi Bear playing baseball and things like that. But he wasn't acting like Yogi Berra. He wasn't saying the only thing that could be used as a case would be like when he would say, "I'm smarter than the average bear," which is sort of like digging at Yogi Berra, saying that he's not smart, maybe. And it's probably part of why he was probably offended by it, or at least hurt by it. But it's kind of just a loose connection. It's sort of just like, hey, his name sounds like a bear because his name is Berra, so let's make a bear and name it Yogi. It's sort of not exactly, it's not exactly supposed to be him. It's not like, for instance, what Bugs Bunny used to do all the time. It's just actually, here is my cartoon version of, Peter Lorre, for instance, or
Yeah,
Edward G. Robinson. You
yeah.
know, those were like legitimate sort of impressions, which if I were Edward G. Robinson, I'd be kind of pissed at the Edward G. Robinson that was on Bugs Bunny. But who knows? Maybe Edward G. Robinson had a sense of humor. I don't know. But or for instance, like Mel Brooks in Blazing Saddles, how he had the character of Hedley Lamar, who was
Mhm.
male and was always getting confused with Hedy Lamar, and everybody kept calling him Hedy, and he kept sort of correcting him. It's Hedley. And the real Hedy Lamar did sue Mel Brooks, and she sued him for $10 million. She was pretty clever. I mean, that's sort of a different case, but like it's sort of it sort of feels like that to me. Again, I don't think it was super bad. Growing up as a kid watching Yogi Bear, I didn't get the impression that it was supposed to be hurtful in any way, and it was definitely wasn't, doesn't look like it was supposed to be representative of him in any way. There was very little baseball involved in the cartoon, and
Yeah.
so I don't know. But the real story, that Hanna-Barbera actually denies that there was ever an inspiration, which I think is going too far too. On the other side of that, I think, that's just when they say, "Oh no, Yogi Berra had nothing to do with us naming him Yogi Bear." I think that sounds a little suspect to me. I think it sounds a lot like Coca-Cola when you go to like Atlanta. Coca-Cola not a sponsor and probably will never be a sponsor. When you go to Atlanta and they say, actually, there was never cocaine in Coca-Cola, which is bullshit. It's not true.
Yep.
And I'm sure you could say that because nobody's allowed to look at the formula, number one. And number two, coca leaves aren't cocaine. So you can say, no, no, there was never any cocaine in our
Mhm.
Coca-Cola because we didn't use powder in it. But yeah, so I kind of equate those two sort of corporate stances as very similar. So that's where I stand on Yogi Berra, I guess. I don't know if I even got anywhere. What do you think?
Yeah. No, no, I think you got it. It's just pretty much that was. It's not surprising, that they would think that there was a connection,
Hmm.
and nowadays there's probably more of that that goes on. Uh, there's always someone looking at something someone says,
Right.
or a song or whatever, and they say, "Hey, wait a minute,"
Well, luckily you have Creative Commons and you have protections for things like that,
Yep.
especially for satire, which I
Hmm.
think is good. I can understand why somebody would be pissed if they
Hmm.
took like my name and turned it into something silly. But at the same time, like, I, you can't really copyright. I, I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel like it would bother me enough. I think it would like annoy me, but I wouldn't think I could take legal action about it. And in fact, wouldn't I get more publicity from it?
There'd be more publicity from taking legal action. You're right. You know,
Well, also, but wouldn't I also get good publicity from this character who's reminding the whole world that I exist by kind of
Mhm.
using my name?
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of evidenced in the fact that nobody under 30 knows who Yogi Berra is, but they all know who Yogi Bear is.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. That's really the reasoning behind doing this podcast was
Mhm.
to bring you start doing a deep dive in it and you say, hey, wait a minute, I know who it was, uh, but some things when I looked at it, there were some things I didn't realize or didn't remember. You know,
I actually never knew about the commercials, which is what we're going to talk about next.
the
It's so
commercials.
exciting.
Yes, I mean, there is. He just did all kinds of commercials. It was funny as you go through them. I know you talked about the YooHoo one, but I didn't see that one. But the first one that jumped up was the Aflac commercial,
Oh, it's very
and
cute. Yeah.
yeah, it's very cute. In the case of the Aflac commercial, maybe more so than for me some of the other commercials.
Mhm.
It sounded like it was really what he'd say you know, uh,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
one line I particularly remembered, and hopefully I'm paraphrasing it correctly, is that he says, "So you get a check, which is just as good as cash."
Yeah,
You know,
he says you get money, which is just as good as cash.
right? That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, and that's like the theme of a couple of his commercials where there's a person sitting next to him being really confused by what he says, and
Hmm.
he's saying something perfectly normal to him. And his earlier commercials, there was a lot less of that. It was more endorsement stuff, which is just
Yep.
cute because he's like not an actor. So it's very cute to watch what looks like, it looks like all those old local commercials where the owner would do a commercial for their business and
Yep.
be really awkward on screen.
Yep.
Come to my car wash. It's great.
Yeah.
He would be like when he did the bowling machine one, he's just
Oh,
like, you really love this. Even kids who can't count, like can use this machine. And it was very cute. And then he knocks all the pins down with the sport ball and he says, "Yay." It's very adorable and awkward, but they don't make him look like a fool in it. The Yoo-Hoo one even isn't that bad. He's just saying, "I like Yoo-Hoo. It's really good and I drink it and I'm famous."
right.
And some of the other ones. But then later, I noticed a theme in these commercials where obviously the director and the writer of the commercial was like, "Say Yogi stuff." And they wrote Yogi stuff for him to say
Yeah.
and made him, and you can, like I said before, you can almost see the pain on his face when he has to say things like the Entenmann's commercial where he's like, "Remember, the box is open until it's closed." And he's like, you just feel him going, "Oh God."
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And how many takes he must have had to do of that, that kind of thing, which is like, such a good sport, by the way.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, his commercials are really inspiring to see. We're going to put some links to some of his commercials in the show notes, as well as the link to the documentary, which is really, really good. It really defends him. It really defends his talent and humanizes him a lot. It's really loving the way his family talks about him. And of course, Billy Crystal is in there
Mm.
because Billy Crystal, Yankees fan, just baseball guy. For me, I was telling my dad also, there's an awful lot of baseball in it for me.
Yeah.
But as a personal documentary, I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, I think when I was doing some searches and I found this documentary, this podcast was interviewing his granddaughter, and his granddaughter was talking about it, and she was talking about the motivation of why she did the documentary,
Mhm.
and basically what it was what she remembered Yogi was from being her grandfather, that she would roll meatballs for holidays and stuff, and when she needed some advice, he would give her some advice, uh, and that's what she knew him as. And hey, this is my grandpa. And then
Yeah.
she started seeing things, and I think one of the things that she said what triggered her was that there was they were making this big deal about three catchers who hit 1,000 RBIs, and how special that was, and how they were superstars and all this. And she said, but Yogi Berra hit 1,400
Yeah.
RBIs.
Yeah, I saw
So
that.
it's
And
like,
she said, I'm sitting next to my grandpa and I'm saying to him, like, you did so much more than them. He's like, yeah, it's okay.
yeah,
And that was him. And I really love the journey that we went on for this whole thing because it's not my genre, but I did grow up with him in the zeitgeist. And I was like, yeah, I know who he is. But when I read all this stuff about him, when I watched the documentary, when I watched his commercials, he really cemented me as a human being in my mind. And he really seemed like he was just a sweet guy, very family oriented. He just loved his family and he loved people. He was always smiling, which I appreciated that somebody said that about him in the
yeah,
documentary, because you really do see him laughing and smiling all the time. And,
yeah,
except for that one time with the Jackie Robinson call.
yeah, yeah. He kind of lost it with that one. Yeah,
And that's the other thing too is that you know okay, good-natured people, or at least people who are good-natured on the outside, they get teased a lot. I
yep,
could tell you this from personal experience. When you're good-natured, or you show a good-natured facade on the outside, people really love to mess with you, and they think it's kind of funny if you have one thing that bothers you to always bring it up. I'm just giving you shit. I'm just messing with you.
yeah,
And they really did that hardcore with that Jackie Robinson call. I mean, I watched the video.
yeah,
It's kind of hard to say because they didn't have multiple angles that I could see,
yep,
but a lot of people were like, "Yeah, he's totally safe. Jackie Robinson was safe. He was totally safe."
yeah,
And Yogi Bear's like, "No, he's out." And his granddaughter was like, "I think he was out." And they're like, some of the sons were like, "I think he was safe. We're not going to
yeah,
tell him that though." And
yeah,
but in interviews, multiple interviews, like they just have him on, and he's thinking, "I'm going to talk about baseball." And they're like, "So Jackie Robinson was safe," and he's just like, guys, come on now." And his word was always bullshit, but like obviously he's not going to say that on television in those days.
yeah.
So, but like, no, he'd never let that go. I mean, I wouldn't either. If somebody was always teasing me about something, man, that would just get my face red. Poor Yogi. Everybody
Yeah.
be nice to Yogi. He's gone now, but be nice to Yogi Berra. He meant well.
Yeah, just take it upon, like you said, we'll put some links about the commercials and the documentary, and familiarize yourself with it, and get to appreciate, if you like, familiarize yourself with it and get to appreciate
Mhm.
what he was like, and the things that he did, which is, it's nice to take a trip back to see this kind of character who uh, was perceived one way, but actually it was a lot deeper than just his yogiisms.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. And even if you're not if you're not a baseball person, like I am, I mean, I don't mind baseball, but I'm not a sport person. I can understand enough about baseball to enjoy baseball, so I kind of like baseball. Just the culture around baseball and the personalities that arose from baseball and just like the history of it is just it is fascinating to me. But it really is nice to learn about Yogi Berra person, just particularly. And he really did seem like a genuinely nice guy and also a genuinely good athlete and a genuinely good player and a really smart dude. He seemed like he really knew his stuff and he was sort of underappreciated in the ways that it seems to count as far as like awards, recognitions, statistics, and things. But when it comes to people, I do think that the people who knew him remember him fondly, which is important.
Yep.
But yeah, I can understand why his granddaughter was a little bit miffed that he was overlooked for a lot of sort of big things, recognition things, when some other big name people were recognized. I get it. I do think he was well respected in the end, which I it gives me a little bit more hope for humanity because the story could have ended a completely different way. It could have been like, yeah, Yogi Berra, remember that guy? He's dead
Yeah.
now. Everybody laugh, but
Yeah.
instead it was like, and it's kind of unrelated, but it sort of isn't. When just bear with me, people. When Pee Wee Herman died, when Paul Rubens died, I was bracing myself for people saying stuff online and people saying stuff in interviews, but I was very pleasantly surprised that after Paul Rubens died, so many people came out to say such really wonderful and nice things about him as a person
Yeah.
instead of just cracking jokes about his indiscretion that he did once or just doing Pee Wee Herman impressions. Like they were just so many people who were in his life when he was young and throughout his life were just talking about what a great guy he was and how much he helped them. And that's kind of awesome. And I really love that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah, we can sort of wrap it up in what's going to be our traditional fashion, which is some good old fashioned dad jokes.
Yes, give me the dad jokes.
Okay. How many apples grow on a tree?
Oh, how many apples?
All of them.
Oh God. Dad, can you fix dinner tonight?
Didn't know it was broken.
Oh, hey, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the I'm hungry, I'm skip thing
Yeah. Oh,
once
yeah.
again.
Yeah. There you go. The last time I was at a baseball game, I kept wondering, why was the ball getting bigger and bigger?
Mhm.
Then it hit me.
Do you okay? Do you know how baseball players keep in contact with each other?
I don't know how.
They touch base from time to time.
Yeah. Mhm. How many baseball players does it take to change a light bulb?
Ooh, how many?
None. They're too busy arguing about the last call.
Specifically the catcher and the umpire.
Yeah.
Okay, not baseball related, but did you hear about the guy who drank invisible ink?
No, I didn't.
He's at the hospital waiting to be seen. Oh, another one. Do you know where stormtroopers like to shop?
No, I don't.
It's right next to the Target.
Uh, do you know why bees hum?
Why?
Because they don't know the words.
Oh, I love it. That's
Yeah.
good.
Do you know what prize they give to the dentist of the year?
No, what?
Just a little plaque.
Oh. Okay. All right. That's it.
Okay, that's it.
That's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough,
Okay.
folks. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Yeah, I think that's all we can stand, and we can't stand
Yeah.
no more.
Yeah, they're all grown worthy. Yeah.
Grown worthy, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad.
Yep.
So, folks, thank you so much for listening. Please send us an email at mochaverse@gmail.com. I almost forgot the email mocciaverse@gmail.com. Send us your submissions for suggestions for topics for future shows. And we did this a little out of order. Thank you so much for listening. I might just move it to the right place.
There you go.
I
Hey,
think I will.
this was great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yay. All right. Bye, guys. Bye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Now we're going to get sued by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I've got a little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow.
Darian, you can't be a podcaster. Don't touch my script.
Yep.